Hi, this is Kathy Sparrow. I'm a co-author of Ignite Your Leadership, and today I have the pleasure of interviewing Jim Bunch, who's known as the ultimate entrepreneur. Say that fast 10 times, huh? And he's here today to share some of his leadership expertise. He is an ultimate entrepreneur. He's just shared a few more of his endeavors, and we'll get to hear more about him now. Welcome, Jim.
Thanks, Kathy. It's great to be here.
Thanks. So tell me, just bring us up to speed about how you got started with your companies, where you started and where you are now.
Well, I think like most entrepreneurs, you start because you see a problem either in a market you can solve or in your own life. And so, it started when I was in college and I thought I was going to go to med school. I was pre-med. And then I realized that I wanted to help people, but I really didn't want to be a doctor. And so I started one of my first companies in college, and that's 5 or 6 companies now. So it's been fun, been a great journey, and you learn a ton about yourself and life when you're in business. So. Yeah.
So when did you realize that you were a leader, not just an entrepreneur? I use that word loosely.
It's funny because you asked about, I guess in the interview, what's your story of leadership in this? And I think you don't really realize you're a leader until all of a sudden people are starting to ask you a bunch of questions and pay you to speak and pay you to mentor or coach or those kind of things. So I think, the part of being a leader isn't like you wake up one day and go, I'm going to be a leader. You probably, like in our case, you're trying to solve a problem, trying to do something better or different. And as a result, you have to lead a team, and then maybe you start leading a community, or you lead an industry, or you lead the world. Mm-hmm. And so I think it was one of those things where, and we've built a couple of companies that have disrupted industries. And so that by nature, if you're disrupting the way that status quo has been, you're in fact leading people into a new territory. And that's the piece that I find exciting, is finding better ways to do something.
Okay, great. I love that word, disrupted. Some people can get disrupted by that word, but it is kind of a neat concept to think that we're making shifts and changes that we're actually are for the better. What are some of the companies?
Well, I'll start with one. It wasn't our first one, but it's one that most people would be familiar with. Is you've been online before to look at a home, right? And seen a 360-degree virtual tour. So that was a company that we built from 6 employees to 1,500 employees in our first year in business. We went public from 0 to 9 months. And our mission was to change the way the world viewed real estate. And back in the 90s, if you wanted to buy a home, you would drive around for 6 to 12 months with real estate agents. They'd unlock a door, you'd walk in, you'd walk out. When we introduced virtual tours, it changed the game overnight, because instead of seeing 5 or 10 homes, in a week, you could actually see 50 homes in a day. Right. And now you would never think about driving around to 50 to 100 homes. You look at 100 homes online, you go look at 2 or 3, you make an offer, and you're in the game. Right. So that was one that we changed the way the world did real estate, but the impact on the environment was huge. If you think about it, at the time there were 700,000 real estate agents that would start up their Cadillacs every day and drive around for 4 to 6 hours a day. So we took hundreds of thousands of cars off the road every day. That wasn't our intention, but the environmental impact was huge. And so we've been fortunate enough to have some processional effect from some of the things we've been doing. But that was one of the companies. Another one, I became a big fan of the personal development industry, of performance. I hired some great coaches. I've done a lot of speaking, and I realized that a lot of people were getting excited at seminars and, getting pumped up and walking on fire and glass and breaking arrows on their neck and stuff like that. I've done all those things. But I looked at the industry from the macro view and I went, how many of these people are actually changing their lives? Can we track it? Can we measure it? You're saying that this stuff, come by the next seminar. And I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars myself on these things. And then I thought, what if we introduced technology that tracked people's performance, that gamified it and made it fun, that actually proved that these things were working or they weren't. And I was okay either way. So we built that company about 12 years ago. Mm-hmm. And then we've had some companies that, didn't succeed, and that was good lessons and insights in those too.
So let's talk about those, because as in any journey, there's those failures. So what were those lessons out of those failures?
Well, I've had two big ones that were, I thought we were going to change the world again kind of things. One of them was a company, ironically enough, it was a software company that we called Succeed 360, and it failed. So we raised capital. We brought on, a great team. We built a great e-learning platform. I think we were about 5 years ahead of our time. And, I'm a surfer. I live here on the beach in San Diego. And one of the things I learned in surfing and in business is if you're in the wrong position, it doesn't matter how good your technology is or how great your team is. If you're too early, that wave's going to hit you. If you're too late, you miss the wave. And so I think we're about 5 years too early in that. And we didn't want to continue to raise capital to try to wait for the market to catch up. But now everybody's got online, e-learning. But I think we're about 5 years too early. There's another one that I think probably somebody else will come do this one. But we grew one of the fastest companies in history, faster than Facebook or Twitter, where we had this idea of, all of us are sharing apps, right? We share apps constantly. Well, most people don't know that there's a bounty paid on every app of 50 cents to $1 to $2. So even though they're free apps, there's companies that are paying for those apps to get downloaded. So we built a software that tracks who's sharing all those apps, and we built a commerce engine that would actually track all of that. It grew from just me and a couple other people to 1 million people in 79 days. Which was really exciting. But I learned something huge. Number one, Google sued us because our brand was really close to a company they acquired for a lot of money. So even if you're in the right and you have your trademarking, when you start off with a $2 million lawsuit out of the gate, that hampers your decision making a little bit. But the big one was between myself and some of the other partners, our values were different. We did not agree on what we wanted to leverage this technology for. I wanted to connect the world and to inspire billions of people to come out of poverty, to be able to leverage, their own networks and resources. And somebody else wanted to turn it into, something they jammed products down. And so, to know your values and your team's values up front is really important, because when things scale faster than you expect, it's really exciting. But if you're not in alignment with values, that can be a challenge. And that's a true leadership thing. That's why you hear so many people now talking about what are the values of this company, not just being something you hang on a wall, but how do we make our day-to-day decisions?
Can you give some advice on how you do that, or how someone else might be able to implement that to make sure they are in alignment with their values?
Yeah, the first thing is the founder's job is to know their own values. And there's all kinds of assessments that you can take online and this and that. One of the companies that we did, we actually have a process that we developed internally, and it asks a series of questions that get into somebody's subconscious values-making process. And so that's the only one that I've seen that uses somebody's language versus having them choose from 10 words that resonate at the frequency. So long and short is there's plenty of processes out there. Once you've determined your values, that's the easy part. But hiring people who have those values and live that way anyways, that's the key. So it's at the point of hiring that you'll determine somebody's values. And then does your company actually design your whole environment around those values? Because the purpose of a business is not just to sell a product or a service. It should actually be to implement a mission, a vision, and a set of values. You should create a ripple through the world with that imprint. And a lot of people miss that. So at the core of your business is your mission. What is the mission we're here to accomplish? What's the vision? What do we see as a better world? Whether you're changing the world to clean energy, or you're changing the way the world does commerce, or you're changing, whatever it is. What's the vision, the future vision of the world you see?
Mm-hmm.
And then how do we as a team align with our values? And not all your values are going to align. If your company, pulls 5 to 10 values together, you may have 3 or 4 of those that you really resonate with, but not the others. That's okay. But you got to have resonance in your values, or you'll find later on it's just tough.
Yeah, I can understand that in a few of those situations. So, what do you think is the most important if someone finds that they're out of resonance with the alignment with the values? How do you? Is there a way to course correct it, or is it exit strategy time?
Yeah, probably exit strategy. I mean, here's the simple reality. Your values are subconscious decision makings. So in other words, I'll give you the best example. You're operating in alignment with your values when you wake up every day and you're excited, you're inspired, and you feel that energy of being pulled towards something.
Right.
If you wake up every day and maybe you've got energy, but you're a little agitated or frustrated and you have to push your way through the day, then that's your soul saying we're out of alignment. All right. All of us operates with a frequency, a vibration, right? And it's subconscious. It's not conscious. We've been making our decisions about the people we hang out with, the businesses we do, unconsciously or subconsciously for years. Just most people never take the time to go, wow, when my life was working really well, when my business was working really well, when I was at the best of my game, that's because my body, my mind, and my soul were in perfect unison. But the moment that your soul is a little off track with what you're supposed to be doing, your mind kind of gets a little funky, and then your body gets that resistance. It's just how attuned are you to what you're supposed to be doing. And I believe that most people, if they really listened and they were honest with themselves and they didn't make their decisions because they had to pay their rent, or they weren't making their decisions because they think their family wants them to be a doctor or a lawyer or whatever, I think a lot of people would probably choose a different path, and they'd be happier, healthier, and wealthier as a result.
Yeah, absolutely. I write about that. I talk about that all the time. Yeah, it's because most of us do buy into that cultural expectation of what we're supposed to be doing. How would you recommend someone stay in alignment with their calling, with their, are there any practices that you have to make sure you're on track all the time or most of the time?
Yeah, well, I'll give you an example. Last night, when my wife and I were laying down to go to sleep, she reminded me of a few things that I said during the day that were out of alignment with my values. So having a really good, educated environment around you to say, hey, I heard you talking about this, but I know you as this. That's really, I think, is good. So whether it's a loved one or a coach or a mentor or a coworker, somebody to tell you the truth, I think is really important, because I don't think anybody wants to ignore their values if they know them. If they don't know them, then they're ignorant. They just they don't know. But I don't think people want to ignore their values, but I think we get caught up in day to day, and we maybe forget, like, oh, okay, that's why I'm a little agitated or frustrated, So I think having people that are truth tellers around you is really important. I remember I hired a coach 19 years ago, my first coach, and I paid him to tell me what he saw in me and to give me the no BS so that I could improve, so that I could not have the blind spots that I knew were holding me back from that next level. I think that's important. And I think that, the more you do that, the more you'll realize that we all have an ego, but you can work with the ego instead of against it. Mm-hmm. And I think the more authentic and transparent we can be about our strengths and our weaknesses, and embrace both, the better off we're going to be. So I think that's part of leadership. Leadership has a certain level of exposure to it. We live literally in a glass house overlooking the ocean. So you can see everything in our house. And that's a metaphor, not just for our home environment, but for life. The greater you become involved in the public, the more a leader you become, the more outspoken you are about a direction you're trying to drive your teams or your world, the more transparent you're going to be. I was watching Obama's exit interview on 60 Minutes. And, it was very clear that he came into office not really aware of what he was getting himself into. And, I think of the leadership transformation that he went through when he was in what he calls the bubble. Mm-hmm. So I think if you truly want to be a leader, get naked in front of a lot of people. Show them what you're good at and what you're not, and don't expect anything different. So.
Oh, that's perfect. Absolutely wonderful. Well, Jim, I want to thank you for your time and your insights, and we'll make sure that we put your websites on there so people can get more of what you offer, which is absolutely wonderful. And we appreciate your support for Ignite Your Leadership.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure, and hopefully this helps shift some people's thinking.
Yeah, that too. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.